The snow outside Truckee had buried the road, the porch, and almost every sound of the living world. Then retired Navy SEAL Ryan Caldwell opened his cabin door and found a German Shepherd mother standing in the storm with two frozen puppies beneath her. When he wrapped the weakest one in his old blanket, he began to cry. Snow fell over Donner Summit like the sky had forgotten how to stop, thick and white and heavy enough to erase the road before a man could look back at his own tire tracks. By the time Ryan Caldwell reached the old family cabin above Truckee, the pine trees were bowed under the weight of it, and the wind came down the slope with a hard hiss that slipped under his collar and found the places where old pain still lived. He sat in his truck for a moment after cutting the engine, watching the headlights fade into a wall of white. The cabin was only 30 feet away, but the storm made it look like another country. Ryan was 38 years old, tall and broad-shouldered with close-cut brown hair, gray-blue eyes, and a thin scar along his right forearm that looked silver in winter light. His body had learned discipline in the Navy SEAL teams, then learned exhaustion after he came home with a limp that appeared only when he was too tired to hide it. Tomorrow he was supposed to report to the Truckee Police Department as a new officer. Tonight was meant to be simple. Unpack his duffel, start a fire, let the mountains speak without anyone asking him to explain the silence behind his eyes. The cabin smelled of cedar walls, cold ashes, and the coffee his father used to brew too strong. Ryan moved through it with the careful habit of a man who noticed exits before furniture, windows before photographs. He turned on one lamp, checked the back door, set his department parka over a chair, and built a fire with split pine from the covered stack. The flames took slowly. They licked the bark, coughed once in the draft, then rose with a warm orange confidence that made the room feel less abandoned. Ryan stood before the hearth and flexed his right hand. He had not meant to come back to Truckee. Not really. He had told people he wanted to serve his hometown, and that was true enough to pass in daylight. But there was another truth under it. He was tired of waking in rented apartments with no one expecting him, tired of sleeping beside a packed bag as if the next call might arrive from a desert, a shipdeck, or a mountain valley where the snow had once taken a friend from his arms. He warmed water in a small kettle and tried not to think about Petty Officer Mark Ellis, whose fingers had gone stiff in Ryan's gloves 12 winters earlier, during a mission no newspaper ever mentioned. He failed. Some memories did not knock. They let themselves in. The earliest sound came just after midnight. Ryan thought at the start it was a branch dragging against the porch rail, a faint scrape beneath the wind. He stood still with the kettle in his hand. The sound came again. Not wood, not ice. Something weaker, uneven, almost swallowed by the storm. Nails. Ryan set the kettle down without a clink and crossed the room. He did not rush. Rushing made noise, and noise made mistakes. At the door he listened, one hand on the knob. Breath quiet in his chest. Another scrape. Then a thin, broken whimper. He opened the door and the storm burst in so hard. The lamp flame flickered beneath its shade. Snow rushed across the threshold, cold enough to sting his eyes. On the porch stood a German Shepherd. She was a full-grown female, tan and black, with a dark saddle across her back, though the colors were almost hidden beneath packed ice. Her chest fur hung in frozen ropes. Her ears were pinned by snow. She swayed once but did not fall. Instead, she lowered her head and looked past Ryan toward the dim square of firelight behind him, as if she had come all this way for the room and not for the man. Then Ryan saw the shapes beneath her. 2 puppies were pressed against the boards near her front legs, so small, the drifting snow had nearly made them part of the porch. One moved with a weak, jerking shiver. The other did not move at all. Ryan dropped to his knees. The mother dog gave a low sound from deep in her throat. Not a threat, more like a warning from a body with nothing left to spend. "Easy," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "I see them." He took off one glove and touched the closest puppy, a female sable trembling cold but breathing. He slid her toward the doorway and into the heat. The other puppy lay half buried against the porch step, a little male with black and tan fur hardened by ice. His body was limp. Ryan scooped him up and felt almost no warmth through the fur. For one heartbeat, he was back on a white ridge far from home with Mark Ellis pressed against his chest and snow filling the radio cracks. No, the word hit him before he spoke it. I tore the old wool blanket from the chair beside the door, wrapped the puppy inside, and held him under his parka against his own chest skin to blanket to fragile life. His hands shook, not from cold. He bowed his head over the small bundle, and the sob that came out of him sounded like something pulled loose after years of being locked away. The mother dog staggered over the threshold only after Ryan brought both puppies inside. She did not enter ahead of them. She did not seek the fire. She waited until Ruby, the little female, lay on a towel near the hearth, and until Finn, the little male, was tucked beneath Ryan's chin in the blanket. Only then did she step into the room, her legs nearly folded beneath her. Ryan reached with one hand slow enough for her to refuse him if she needed to. She did not. She leaned into his palm with the terrible trust of a creature who had run out of choices. The cabin filled with wet fur smoke and the metallic smell of fear. Ryan knew enough about exposure to keep them away from direct heat. Warm too fast and life could turn on itself. He made a nest of towels and blankets, rubbed snow from ears and paws, warmed water, until it was only barely more than skin warm, and touched it to the mother's mouth with his fingers. She swallowed, then lifted her head toward Finn, who still had not made a sound. Ryan pressed the puppy closer and whispered, "Stay. You hear me, little man, stay." The mother watched him. Her amber eyes were dull with hunger but steady. She had carried 2 lives through a storm no grown man should have crossed. She had chosen his door from all the doors buried in the mountain. And when Ryan slid his fingers under the frozen strip of cloth around her neck, searching for anything that might tell him where she had come from, his knuckles struck metal hidden against her fur. A tag, not a license tag, something stamped, coded, and deliberately covered. The storm did not weaken before dawn. It only changed its voice, pressing snow against the cabin windows, until the glass looked milk white from the inside. In the small room above, truckee Ryan Caldwell sat on the floor near the hearth with his back against the old leather chair, one hand resting beside the German Shepherd mother and the other cupped around the blanket bundle that held the smallest puppy. The fire had begun to win a little warmth from the walls, but Ryan kept the dog several feet from the flames. Deep cold had rules. He had learned them the hard way in places where good intentions could kill faster than indifference. The mother dog lay on her side now, breathing in short, tired pulls. Her tan and black coat was damp where the ice had melted, and when Ryan lifted a towel from her shoulder, steam rose faintly from the fur. Ruby, the sable female puppy, had found her mother's belly by instinct and pressed against it with a tiny stubbornness that made Ryan almost smile. Finn still worried him. The male puppy's breaths came shallow and far apart, like someone tapping at a door from the other side of sleep. Ryan worked in silence because silence seemed to help them believe him. He warmed water, dipped 2 fingers, and touched a drop to Finn's mouth. Nothing. He waited, counted 4 slow breaths of his own, then tried again. This time the puppy's tongue moved, barely. It was so small a motion that another man might have missed it, but Ryan saw it and closed his eyes for half a breath. "There you are," he whispered. His voice broke on the last word, and he cleared his throat as if the cabin had accused him of softness. The mother lifted her head and watched him. Snow had crusted along her eyelashes. A narrow strip of dirty fabric cut into the thick fur around her neck, partly frozen in place. Ryan had felt metal beneath it during those opening desperate minutes. Now, with the room warmer and the dogs no longer actively dying in his hands, he leaned closer. "I need to see what they tried to hide," he said. The dog did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. She held still. That obedience did not feel trained. It felt exhausted. Ryan cut the frozen cloth with his pocket knife, slow and careful, then eased it away from the fur. A small metal tag dropped against his palm. The tag was scratched bent at one edge and filmed with ice. Ryan rubbed it between a towel and his thumb until the engraving appeared. Sadie. Beneath the name sat a string of numbers, and beneath that a small logo made of a cedar tree framed by a hollow circle. Cedar Hollow K9 Academy. Ryan stared at it. The room seemed to shrink around his hand. He knew Cedar Hollow. Most police departments in the region knew it. Years ago, before his last deployment, he had spent 4 days there during a joint search and recovery course. The facility had looked clean then, almost proud of itself, with long training lanes, well-kept kennels, and instructors who talked about working dogs as if they were partners. Ryan remembered one exercise near an old ski patrol route above Truckee. Safe return pattern, they had called it. If a dog was separated in poor visibility, it was taught to search for a known shelter point marked by scent structure and repeated approach. His family's cabin had been used once because it sat off the road and held heat well in storms. "A perfect safe door," an instructor had said, laughing into his coffee. Ryan looked down at Sadie. No one was laughing now. He checked the puppies next. Ruby wore a tiny piece of soft cord around her neck, cut so short it had nearly disappeared under the fur. Finn had nothing visible until Ryan turned him gently in the blanket and found a narrow red mark beneath the throat, as if a collar had been removed in haste. Near Ruby's belly, tucked in the damp fur, he found a tiny plastic band with a number printed on it. No name, just a number. Finn had the broken half of one caught near his front leg. The plastic cracked white from stress. Ryan set the pieces beside Sadie's tag on the floor. The sight angered him more than he expected. Not hot anger, not loud. A cold, clean kind that arranged facts in a line. Sadie was registered. The puppies were not. Sadie had been valuable enough to mark. The puppies had been treated like a secret. He opened his laptop on the kitchen table, but the mountain internet blinked in and out as if the storm had teeth in the wires. It took him 20 minutes to load the county notice. When it appeared, the headline was simple. Working dogs reported stolen from Cedar Hollow K9 Academy. A month earlier, masked intruders had supposedly broken in. During bad weather, disabled cameras and taken several trained German shepherds. Sadie's name appeared in the list. There was no mention of puppies. Ryan read the notice twice, then a third time. The official story was too clean. A thief who broke into a training academy in a snowstorm and stole only the most valuable dogs would need maps, codes, timing, and the confidence of someone who knew exactly where not to look. He glanced toward the hearth. Sadie had shifted herself into a curve around Ruby even in sleep. Finn lay under the blanket in Ryan's lap, his small body warmer now, but still frighteningly light. A soft knock of ice slid from the roof and struck the porch. Sadie's eyes opened at once. Her ears pricked, but she did not bark. She only looked toward the door, then toward the puppies, then back at Ryan. He understood that look. Guard this. He reached for his phone and called the emergency number for a veterinarian in town. Dr. Lauren Price answered after several rings. Her voice thick with sleep but clear enough when Ryan described the dogs. He gave her the details without decoration, exposure, dehydration, pressure marks, raw paws, 2 unlisted puppies, Cedar Hollow tag. When he said the academy's name, the line went quiet. "Do not release that dog or those puppies to anyone tonight," Dr. Price said at last. Her voice had lost every trace of sleep. "Keep them warm, not hot. Tiny amounts of water. No full feeding. If that puppy has been cold and starving, too much food can hurt him. Ryan looked down at Finn as the puppy gave a faint twitch beneath the blanket. "I know," he said. She asked about gum color, breathing rhythm, body temperature by touch, and whether the mother had milk. Ryan answered while moving between the hearth and table, one eye always on Sadie. Dr. Price told him she would drive up at daybreak if the road could be cut. Before she hung up, she added, "There have been whispers about Cedar Hollow. Staff leaving. Dogs transferred before paperwork was signed. Nothing I could prove, but a mother dog with 2 hidden puppies did not crawl to your porch by accident." After the call ended, Ryan placed the phone beside the tag. Outside, the storm kept covering the world. Inside, the truth had begun to show through ice. Sadie raised her head, trembling from the effort, and looked not at the front door but toward the back of the cabin where the old ski trail disappeared into the trees. Then she pushed one weak paw against the floor and tried to stand. Morning came without sunrise. Only a gray thinning behind the snow that made the cabin windows glow like old paper. The pines around Ryan Caldwell's place stood buried and silent, their branches bent low enough to brush the drifts, while the narrow road from Truckee lay under fresh powder that had no respect for human schedules. Ryan had slept less than 20 minutes at a time. Each time his head dipped, Finn made a sound, or Sadie shifted, or the old memory of Mark Ellis reached up from the dark and tightened around his ribs. By 7, he had warmed more water, changed the damp towels, and coaxed Ruby into taking a few weak mouthfuls from her mother. Finn was alive. That was the sentence he kept repeating in his head because it was the only one that mattered. Finn was alive, though his body still felt too small under the blanket, and every breath seemed like a choice he had to make again. An engine climbed the road just after 8. Sadie heard it before anyone else. Her head came up sharply, and the change in her body was instant. The tremble in her legs became something harder. Ruby squeaked and buried her face against Sadie's belly. Finn did not wake, but his tiny paws curled under the blanket against Ryan's palm. Ryan moved to the window and saw an old white pickup crawling through the drifts, the front bumper pushing snow aside like the slow plow. Dr. Lauren Price stepped out with a medical bag in one hand and a folded thermal pad under her arm. She was 57, compact and silver-haired, with clear brown eyes and the kind of practical face that had no patience for panic. Her winter coat was patched at one elbow. Her boots were better than his. Ryan liked her immediately. He opened the door before she knocked. "Road's bad," he said. Lauren brushed snow from her sleeve and glanced past him toward the hearth. "So are the patients, if half of what you told me is true." She did not crowd the dogs. That mattered. She set her bag on the floor, removed her gloves, warmed her hands near the fire, and spoke to Sadie in a low, even voice. "Nobody is taking your babies today, sweetheart." The sentence changed the room. Sadie's ears eased back by a fraction. Her eyes stayed fixed on Lauren, but the growl that had begun under her breath faded before it fully formed. Lauren examined the mother before the puppies, moving with a patience that made each touch a question. Gum color, hydration, body temperature, pulse. Raw pads, joints, ribs. When she reached the fur around Sadie's neck, her mouth tightened. This wasn't an ordinary collar. She parted the fur lower along the chest and found parallel pressure lines where something had held the dog too tightly. She was restrained in transport or in a crate built for control instead of care. Ryan stood beside her, jaw still. Lauren moved to Ruby. The little female flinched when the stethoscope touched her side, then tried to bite the metal with more courage than teeth. Lauren gave a tiny laugh. "Well, though there is the family temper." The laugh helped. It was small, but it put one warm board over a deep hole. Finn took longer. Lauren's face stayed calm, but Ryan saw the way she slowed when she lifted the blanket from his chest. The puppy's black and tan fur had dried into soft spikes. One ear folded over his head, he looked less like a working dog than a misplaced sock with a heartbeat. Ryan would have smiled if his throat had not hurt so much. Lauren checked him carefully, then slipped a warming pad under the outer layer of blanket, never directly against his skin. Severe hypothermia, she said. Dehydration. Likely underfed for more than a day, maybe longer, but his heart is fighting. Ryan looked away toward the window. The snow had built a white shelf along the sill. He stopped moving in my hands last night, he said. Lauren did not offer a neat comfort. She only said, and he started again. That was better. It was true. While Lauren prepared a small syringe of fluids, another vehicle climbed the road. Officer Claire Benton arrived in a dark department SUV with chains on the tires and a folder tucked inside her jacket. Claire was 41, with auburn hair pulled tight at the back of her neck and a face shaped by too many nights of finishing reports. Nobody wanted to read. She was not large, but she carried herself like a door that closed firmly. Ryan had met her twice during hiring paperwork. She had been polite, guarded, and more observant than people assumed. When she stepped inside the cabin, she stopped at the sight of Sadie and the puppies. File photographs could show a missing dog. They could not show a mother placing her body between a stranger and two babies the size of mittens. Claire removed her hat slowly. You said one adult German Shepherd. Ryan nodded toward the blanket in his arms. She brought her children. Claire's eyes changed, not softened exactly, sharpened. She set the folder on the kitchen table and opened it. Cedar Hollow reported a theft a month ago. 5 trained dogs missing, including Sadie. No puppies listed, no pregnant females listed, no recent litters in their public breeding records. Lauren looked up from Finn. Then somebody left out the most important part. Claire slid photographs across the table. Security stills, a facility diagram, a report written in language so polished it seemed almost slippery. The cameras went out in exactly the places a person would choose if they already knew the blind spots. Locks opened without real damage. Only high-value animals gone. My captain called it unfortunate but straightforward. She glanced toward Sadie. I never liked straightforward when it tries too hard. Ryan studied the report. The original case had been treated as a clean theft by unknown intruders during bad weather. Cedar Hollow's owner, Warren Blake, had given a public statement about lost service and community trust. Ryan had seen the man's photo online the night before, late 50s, expensive coat, silver hair, smile, built for donors. Could Sadie have given birth after the theft? Ryan asked. Lauren shook her head. These pups are about 7 weeks. If Sadie was taken a month ago, they were already alive. The room went quiet in the way rooms do when facts step into them carrying weight. Ruby began to whimper. Sadie bent her head and licked the puppy once, then lifted her eyes toward the back door. Ryan noticed. So did Claire. Sadie tried to stand again. Her legs shook, but her attention did not waver. She stared through the rear window toward the white line of trees. She did that last night, Ryan said. Same direction. Claire closed the folder halfway. We document before we move. She photographed Sadie, the puppies, the tags, the pressure marks, the broken plastic bands, the back door, even the places where Sadie's paws had scraped the floor. Lauren wrote medical observations in a small notebook, her pen moving fast without ever sounding hurried. Ryan watched Sadie press one paw to the floor, then another, trying to make her body obey a message it could barely carry. He knew the difference between fear and direction. He had trusted dogs in the field before. He had trusted wounded men too, when their eyes said more than their mouths could. Sadie was not restless. She was pointing. Outside, somewhere beyond the cabin, passed snow heavy enough to bury scent and tracks. The story had another room waiting. Before anyone could decide what to do about that, Ruby suddenly jerked upright at the faint grind of tires far down the road. Sadie swung her body in front of both puppies, weak, shaking, and certain, and a low growl filled the cabin before human ears could hear the engine. By mid-afternoon, the storm had softened into a steady fall that made the world outside Ryan Caldwell's cabin look quiet enough to trust. Though every drift had grown deeper and every branch still carried too much weight. Inside, the fire burned low and gold, and the 3 German shepherds rested in a nest of towels that smelled of wool smoke, antiseptic, and warm milk. Finn had taken 3 measured drops from Lauren's syringe and kept them down. Ruby had discovered that Ryan's bootlace was a dangerous enemy and had fallen asleep with one paw on it. Even Sadie had lowered her head for a few minutes, though she woke whenever the wind shifted near the door. Ryan stood at the kitchen counter washing his hands, listening to Claire speak quietly on the phone with someone at the station. Her words were careful. Possible evidence. Medical hold. Unlisted puppies. Request to preserve original Cedar Hollow file. She did not sound dramatic. That made the facts sound worse. The engine returned at 3:17, slow and controlled on the buried road. Ryan knew the time because he looked at the old clock above the stove, the one his father had never managed to make run 5 minutes late or early. Sadie came awake before the tires reached the cabin. Her head lifted, ears forward, body tightening around the puppies. Ruby gave a thin squeak. Finn slept through it, which frightened Ryan more than if he had cried. Claire ended her call and slid the phone into her coat pocket. Lauren closed her medical bag but did not move away from the dogs. Ryan crossed to the front window. A black SUV emerged between the trees, polished dark beneath the white crust of snow. It stopped behind Claire's department vehicle. The driver stepped out carefully, avoiding the deepest slush, as if the mountain had personally offended him. He was tall, late 50s, with silver hair, a pressed charcoal coat, leather gloves, and the composed smile of a man used to entering rooms already forgiven. Ryan opened the door but stayed in the threshold. The cold came in around him. "Mr. Caldwell," the man said. His voice was warm in a practiced way, like a room staged for buyers. "Warren Blake, Cedar Hollow K9 Academy. I understand you recovered one of our dogs during the storm. You cannot imagine how grateful I am." Ryan watched his eyes, not his mouth. Warren looked past him into the cabin and saw Sadie near the hearth. His expression held. Then he saw the puppies. Something flickered behind the smile. Not surprise alone. Calculation. Disappointment, maybe. It was gone quickly, but not quickly enough. "And her litter," Warren added too late. Ryan did not move aside. "Who told you they were here? Small town, smaller county. Your department contacted mine about identification." "Naturally, I came myself." Behind Ryan, Sadie growled. It started so low it seemed to come through the floorboards. Warren's smile shifted toward sympathy. Poor girl. She must be terribly confused after what the thieves put her through. Sadie tried to stand. Lauren placed one hand near the dog's shoulder, not holding her down, only offering balance. Sadie rose anyway. Her legs shook, her ribs showed under the wet fur, but she planted herself in front of Finn and Ruby as if her body were still a wall strong enough to stop the world. Ruby crawled behind her mother's front legs. Ryan looked at Warren. "You called her one of your dogs. She is registered to Cedar Hollow. What is her name?" Warren's eyes paused for half a beat. "We have several animals in active rotation. Records would confirm." "Sadie," Ryan said. The word landed hard in the cold air between them. Warren's mouth tightened. Claire stepped into view behind Ryan, her badge visible at her belt. "Mr. Blake, these animals are under veterinary observation and police documentation." Warren looked at her, then at Lauren. Dr. Price, surely you understand that trained working animals recover best in a controlled facility. Lauren's face did not change. They recover best where they are not terrified. Warren gave a short laugh, but it did not find anyone willing to meet it. Fear response is common after theft. These animals may associate any transport sound with the criminal handling they endured. Sadie's growl grew louder when he said transport. Ryan heard the shift. So did Claire. Warren took one careful step onto the threshold. Sadie barked with a force that seemed impossible from her weakened body. Ruby shrieked and pressed flat to the blanket. Finn woke and made a sound so small Ryan felt it more than heard it. He moved before thinking, scooping the puppy into the old wool blanket and holding him against his chest. The warmth of the little body went through him like a plea. His throat closed. For one breath, Warren, Claire, Lauren, the snow, the badge waiting for him in town. All of it faded. There was only Finn's tiny head under his chin and the memory of another weight in his arms, another winter, another life he could not pull back. Ryan's eyes filled. He did not wipe them. He simply held the puppy tighter, careful not to hurt him, and said in a voice rough enough to scrape, "You are not taking them." Warren's expression cooled. The gentleman slid away, leaving the owner beneath. "These are valuable assets, Mr. Caldwell." Claire's pen stopped moving. Lauren stared at him. Ryan lifted his eyes slowly. "Assets." Warren adjusted his gloves. "Professional language. You understand structure, being former military." "I understand chains of custody," Ryan said. "Medical hold, active report, possible evidence in an open animal cruelty and fraudulent transfer investigation." Claire glanced at him, perhaps surprised by how cleanly he said it. Warren noticed too. "Be careful," he said. "A new officer can make a career difficult before it begins." Ryan shifted Finn gently in the blanket. "So can a man who drives through a blizzard to collect a dog he forgot to call by name." The room went very still. Warren looked past him one more time at Sadie standing over Ruby, at the tag on the table, at Claire's camera resting near the folder. Then he stepped back into the snow. "I will speak with your department," he said. They watched the SUV reverse down the drive, its red taillights fading behind the curtain of snow. Sadie did not lower herself until the engine was gone. When she at last folded back onto the blankets, she placed her muzzle over Ruby and kept her eyes on the door. Claire released a breath she had been holding. "He knew about the puppies," she said. Lauren nodded once. "He was upset they were alive." No one spoke after that because the sentence was ugly enough to fill the room by itself. A half hour later, Claire's phone buzzed. She read the message and her face changed. "My neighbor from St. Luke's just dropped something at my porch," she said. "A manila envelope with my name on it. No return address." She listened to the voicemail, then put it on speaker. An elderly voice from the church office said someone had left it near the donation basket before noon. Claire drove down the mountain as soon as the road crew cleared the lower bend, promising to return before dark. When she came back, snow clung to her hat and a damp envelope lay under her arm. Inside was a photograph of an abandoned ski patrol station buried among trees, a torn Cedar Hollow invoice, and one line written in block letters on plain paper. "Ask where the puppies were born." Night settled over Truckee in layers of blue and white, and the snow behind Ryan Caldwell's cabin rose nearly to his knees where the wind had driven it against the back steps. The storm had quieted, but the mountain did not feel calm. It felt watchful, like a room after someone has lied in it. Inside the cabin, the envelope from St. Luke's lay open on the kitchen table. The photograph showed the old ski patrol station on Juniper Ridge, a squat building Ryan had not visited since he was a teenager. It had once served the backcountry trails before the resort changed its routes. Now it stood in timberland boarded forgotten, useful only to hunters who lost their way, and teenagers who thought abandoned buildings made them brave. The handwritten line beneath the photograph would not leave the room. Ask where the puppies were born. Ryan looked from the picture to Sadie. The German Shepherd mother lay with her head lifted, eyes fixed on the back door. Claire Benton had already photographed the envelope. The paper, the invoice scrap, and the table before anyone touched anything twice. She wore gloves now. Her face had the steady blankness of an officer trying to keep anger from bending procedure. Dr. Lauren Price knelt beside Sadie, checking her pulse and the color of her gums again. "She should not be walking anywhere tonight," Lauren said. Her voice was not sharp, only heavy. "She barely has enough strength to stand." Sadie heard movement near the back door and pushed herself upright anyway. Ruby tumbled against her mother's leg, indignant and sleepy. Finn remained tucked in the blanket in Ryan's lap, warmer than before, but still fragile, his tiny nose making faint clicks against the wool. Ryan looked down at him. The smart thing would be to wait for daylight. The smart thing had not carried a mother dog through a blizzard with 2 puppies hidden under her body. "What if we do not ask her to work?" he said. "What if we let her show us only if she chooses?" Lauren did not answer quickly. She studied Sadie, then Ryan. 10 minutes outside at a time. Rapt pause. No pulling. If she falters, you carry her back. If either puppy worsens, we stop everything. Claire nodded. "I will document the start point and call in our location before we leave." Ryan wrapped Sadie's raw paws with clean gauze and soft protective booties Lauren pulled from her kit. Sadie tolerated the process, though she watched the back door through every breath. Ruby was placed in a padded crate near the hearth with a warm towel. She complained in the beginning in a voice too small for her opinion, then buried herself in the cloth. Finn stayed inside Ryan's coat, swaddled in the old blanket because Lauren wanted his warmth steady, and because Ryan could not quite make himself set the puppy down. He told himself it was medical. The small weight beneath his parka answered with a weak squirm, and the excuse became unnecessary. Some things did not need defending. They stepped into the snow just after 8. The cold bit clean through Ryan's gloves. Claire followed with a flashlight angled low to preserve the surface around their tracks. Sadie moved slowly, not like a trained search dog on command, but like a mother returning to a nightmare because something inside it still mattered. Her nose lifted once. She turned from the old woodpile and chose the narrow trail toward Juniper Ridge. Ryan kept the lead slack. "Easy, girl," he murmured. "Your pace." The path was nearly gone beneath the drifts, but Sadie seemed to remember the shape of it, by the way the trees leaned and the wind changed between trunks. Every few yards she stopped, breathing hard. Each stop made Ryan think of turning back. Each time she looked at him with amber eyes and took one more step. Claire photographed broken branches, faint impressions under the fresh powder, places where snow had been packed and refrozen before the latest fall. "Somebody used this route recently," she said, "and not tonight, maybe before the storm." Less than 2 miles from the cabin, the trees opened into a small clearing. The old ski patrol station stood half buried in snow. Its red paint faded to the color of dried rust. One boarded window had been pried loose. The front door hung slightly open, though fresh snow had drifted against the threshold in a way that could not hide the darker churn beneath. Sadie stopped 20 feet away and began to tremble. Not from cold alone. Ryan felt the lead vibrate through his glove. Finn stirred under his coat and gave the softest cry. Sadie turned her head toward the sound and tried to go back to him, then faced the station again. Her body could not decide between fear and duty. Ryan crouched in the snow beside her. "You did enough," he said. "Stay here with me." Claire led the way, slow and careful, camera raised. She took photographs of the door, the threshold, the broken board, the snowpack, the tire marks half filled near the side wall. Then she looked back at Ryan. This place has been cleared recently. The smell inside reached them before they entered. Sour bedding, old dog food, damp wood, and the stale heat of animals kept too long without air. Ryan had smelled worse in war, but this was different. War at least admitted it was cruel. Well, this smelled like cruelty trying to be practical. Claire documented the room from the doorway. A portable heater sat unplugged near a wall. 2 short lengths of chain lay in the corner with fresh shine along the clips. A stack of towels stiff with frozen moisture had been shoved under a bench. Ryan swept his flashlight low and saw dark stains in the cracks of the floorboards, paw marks, and a small depression in a heap of torn blankets near the back wall. Lauren had insisted on staying with Ruby at the cabin, so Ryan forced himself to observe without touching. "That bedding," he said quietly. Claire moved closer with the camera. In the center of the blankets was a small dried cord, the kind used to tie off something soft and living in emergency care. Claire's face tightened. This could be where they were born. Beside the blankets lay a milk replacement bottle cracked at the neck, and a receipt from a farm supply store outside Reno. The date was 6 weeks old. Under a warped floorboard, Claire found a strip of printed plastic with 3 numbers and a partial Cedar Hollow inventory code. It did not match Sadie's tag. It did not match Ruby's band. It might have belonged to another dog entirely. Ryan stood in the center of the room and imagined Sadie here chained short, giving birth on dirty blankets while snow pressed against the walls and someone outside decided which lives were worth writing down. His hand went unconsciously to Finn under his coat. The puppy had gone still, but the warmth was there. "She got them out," he said. His voice was low. Claire looked toward the doorway where Sadie stood in the snow, head lowered, eyes bright in the flashlight beam, and brought them to the only safe door she remembered. Claire stepped outside to send the photographs through a secure line to a state investigator. She trusted a man named Daniel Reeves who handled rural corruption and illegal transport cases across the Sierra counties. Her message was short and exact. Recovered German Shepherd mother and 2 unlisted puppies led officers to abandoned ski patrol station. Evidence suggests unauthorized holding, recent birth, and possible staged theft from Cedar Hollow K9 Academy. Ryan listened to the wind move through the old station boards. Sadie leaned against his leg, suddenly drained the message delivered. He knelt and checked the wraps on her paws. "We are going home," he told her. She did not resist. On the way back, the snow began again, soft in the beginning, then thicker. Claire walked behind them, flashlight low, marking their path. Halfway to the cabin, her phone buzzed with Daniel Reeves's reply. She read it once, stopped walking, and read it again. "He says Cedar Hollow filed no breeding records for Sadie in the last year," she said. "But a sealed county import permit shows she was moved with 2 neonatal animals 3 days after the alleged theft." Ryan looked toward the dark trees ahead. The lie was no longer hiding behind a door. It had paperwork. The next morning broke clear and merciless, the kind of mountain morning that makes every lie look sharper, because there is nowhere for shadow to soften it. Sunlight flashed across the snow above Truckee, turning the drifts outside Ryan Caldwell's cabin into hard white ridges and lighting the old ski patrol station photographs on Claire Benton's laptop until each detail seemed to accuse someone by name. Ryan had not slept. Claire had not left. Dr. Lauren Price had spent the night in the spare room with one ear tuned to the puppies and the other to her phone, which kept buzzing with questions from state investigators. Finn was stronger by a thread. That thread mattered. He could lift his head now for a few breaths before gravity remembered him. Ruby had decided the world was survivable if she could keep one paw on Sadie's belly and one eye on Ryan. Sadie, after the walk to Juniper Ridge, slept like a creature dragged from the bottom of the sea. Claire set a printed map on the kitchen table. The old ski patrol station, Ryan's cabin, Cedar Hollow K9 Academy, and the route toward Reno formed a rough chain across the region. Not random, not neat enough to be innocent. "Daniel Reeves is requesting a limited inspection order," she said. "Kennel Records, Transport Bay Administrative Office, and any off-site property connected to recent canine movement." Ryan rubbed his hands over his face. The stubble along his jaw rasped against his palms. "How long?" "Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow morning. Faster if I can give him something that connects the puppies to Cedar Hollow beyond Sadie's tag and the permit." Lauren looked up from her notes. "The medical evidence connects them. Whelping, timeline, condition, restraint marks, malnutrition. But if someone inside saw where they were kept..." She let the sentence hang because every person in the cabin knew the name the envelope had not signed. Emily Hart appeared at St. Luke's Church just after noon. Claire got the call from the church secretary, then drove down with Ryan because Emily would not speak at the station and would not come to the cabin. The roads were passable in the hard, bright weather, though snowbanks rose above the hood in places. St. Luke's sat near the edge of town, a small stone church with a bell tower, a red front door, and shoveled steps salted by someone who believed ice was a personal failing. Inside, the sanctuary smelled of candle wax, old wood, and wet wool. Emily sat in the back pew with her coat still buttoned, a young woman of 33 with tired hazel eyes and brown hair tucked under a knit cap. She stood when Claire approached, then sat again as if her knees had changed their mind. "You found Sadie," she said. It was not a question. Claire nodded. "And her puppies." Emily pressed both hands to her mouth. For a moment she looked so relieved she might break. Ryan stayed a step behind Claire. He had learned long ago that frightened witnesses often ran from too much authority in one room. Emily looked at him anyway. "Is the little male alive?" Ryan felt the question enter him under the ribs. "Yes," he said. "Barely, but yes." Emily closed her eyes. A tear slid down her face and disappeared into the collar of her coat. "Finn," she whispered. "I named him Finn when no one was listening. His sister was Ruby." Claire exchanged one glance with Ryan. "You worked at Cedar Hollow?" Emily nodded. "Kennel care. 3 years. Back then I thought it was the best job I would ever have. Those dogs were treated like soldiers by some of us. Partners. Family, even if the paperwork called them inventory." Her voice hardened on the last word. "Then Warren started moving dogs after hours. Not all of them. Only the ones with advanced training, strong bloodlines, or special markings. Records changed before the animals left. Sometimes a dog went from active to transferred to stolen in the same week." Claire took out her recorder only after asking permission. Emily stared at it, then nodded. "Sadie had her puppies in the old ski patrol station," she said. "Warren moved her there because he did not want the litter in the official kennel logs. He said the puppies would bring too many questions if the theft story went public." Ryan's hands curled in his lap. He kept them still. "Why were they left there?" Emily looked toward the altar where a small wooden cross caught sunlight from a high window. "They were not supposed to be left. They were supposed to be moved south after the storm. My brother Tyler drove for Cedar Hollow. Contract work. He thought he was moving supplies and sometimes dogs with paperwork. He did not know about the false records in the beginning. When he found out, Warren told him he was already part of it." Her mouth trembled. "I tried to get proof. I copied schedules. I photographed invoices. Then Warren fired me and said if I made noise, Tyler would go to jail alone." Ryan thought of Finn in the blanket of Sadie standing in the storm. Until both babies crossed the threshold. "Why the envelope?" he asked gently. Emily turned to him. "Because I saw the local news update about a recovered dog. It did not mention puppies. I prayed it was her. Then I heard Dr. Price had gone up your road. She managed a small, broken smile. Truckee talks even in a blizzard. Claire leaned forward. Emily, we need whatever you have. Emily pulled a small USB drive from the pocket of her coat wrapped in a folded church bulletin. Schedules, payment codes, some photos, a list of initials Warren used instead of names. I do not know if it is enough. Claire accepted it with gloved hands and sealed it in an evidence bag she had brought for exactly this hope. Enough starts small, she said. Then it learns to stand. Before they left, Emily caught Ryan near the church door. Sadie is not aggressive, she said. People will say she is dangerous if she growled at Warren. Ryan looked at her carefully. She stood over her babies. That is not danger. That is motherhood. Emily nodded and her shoulders lowered in a way Ryan had not seen before. She remembered your cabin from training. I was there that day years ago. Warren used to joke that your place was the safest door in the mountains. Ryan felt the old phrase move through him. Safe door. He had thought the memory belonged to him. It had belonged to Sadie, too. Back at the cabin, Claire plugged Emily's USB into an isolated department laptop Daniel Reeves had authorized for evidence review. Files opened one by one. Invoices, kennel notes, transport routes, a spreadsheet with dogs listed by codes. Sadie's line contained 3 hidden entries beneath a tab labeled maintenance stock. Female adult 2 juvenile units, hold at JR station pending road clearance. Lauren read the words over Claire's shoulder and went pale with anger. Juvenile units, she said. They were puppies. Ruby stirred near Sadie, made a squeaky sound, and rolled onto her back as if offended by the entire human species. The tiny absurdity saved the room from boiling over. Ryan laughed once quietly, and it surprised him. Finn opened one sleepy eye under the blanket, then closed it again. Claire's phone rang. Daniel Reeves had reviewed the opening upload. His voice came through crisp and low. We have enough for a limited inspection order at Cedar Hollow tonight, he said. Stay inside approved areas. Preserve chain of custody. Bring the recovered dog only if the veterinarian clears transport and only for observation. No field work. Ryan looked towards Sadie. She was awake now, staring at the laptop as if the voices in the room had turned the past into scent. Then Daniel added, one more thing. A new transport leaves Cedar Hollow tomorrow before noon. Destination unknown. If those records are right, it may include the remaining missing dogs. Evening returned, cold and polished with stars, showing above Truckee after days of storm clouds. The snowfields around Cedar Hollow K9 Academy shone under security lights when Ryan Caldwell arrived with Claire Benton, Dr. Lauren Price, and 2 state investigators in unmarked vehicles, and the place looked almost too clean to be guilty. Long kennel buildings stretched behind black fencing. Training yards lay smooth under untouched snow. Flags near the administrative office hung stiff in the freezing air. A sign by the gate promised discipline honor service. Ryan read the words once and felt Finn's weak body against his chest from the night before, wrapped in wool, fighting for every breath. Words were easy. A sign could promise anything. The question was what lived behind it after midnight. Sadie rode in Lauren's vehicle on a padded mat, wrapped and monitored with strict limits placed on what she would be asked to do. Ruby and Finn stayed at the clinic under a technician's care, and Ryan checked his phone every few minutes for updates until Lauren gave him a look that could have disciplined a platoon. They are stable, she said. Your staring at the screen will not improve their oxygen. Claire almost smiled. Ryan put the phone away. Almost. The inspection order allowed access to the transport bay, kennel corridor, administrative office, and records attached to recent canine movement. Daniel Reeves, 46, gray-haired and calm in a plain winter jacket, led the entry with the patience of a man who believed haste was where evidence went to die. Beside him stood Inspector Dana Miles from a federal animal welfare unit, 51, quiet, severe, carrying a clipboard as if it were a blade. No one kicked doors, no one shouted. They entered with cameras running, boots log times recorded. The transport bay smelled of disinfectant rubber mats and something washed too recently. Ryan noticed the drains before anything else. He had been in enough clean rooms to distrust the ones that tried too hard. Dana photographed the floor, the crate stack, the storage hooks, the hose reel, the log clipboard hanging by the bay door. Sadie stood just inside with Lauren at her side. The German Shepherd mother looked smaller in the harsh light than she had in the cabin. Her body still thin beneath the blanket coat Lauren had fitted around her. She sniffed once near a row of crates and turned away. No reaction. Claire recorded it. "Negative response at crate storage," she said softly. Sadie moved to the loading ramp, paused, and lowered her head near a seam where the rubber mat did not quite meet the wall. Her breathing changed. Lauren watched her pulse with one hand lightly on her shoulder. Ryan crouched a few feet away. He could smell metal and old fear under the bleach. Daniel had the mat lifted only after Dana photographed the position. Beneath it, caught against a bolt, was a curl of tan and black fur and a small piece of blue plastic. Lauren leaned in, then looked at Ryan. "Same material as Ruby's band." Dana bagged it. Claire's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. From the bay, they moved into the kennel corridor. Several dogs lifted their heads behind closed runs. Some barked once. Others watched in silence. Sadie did not pull toward them, though a soft whine slipped from her when one older German Shepherd pressed his nose to the gate. She knew him. That much was clear. But she did not stop there. She turned toward the administrative wing with a focus so narrow even Daniel noticed. "That is not where a recovered mother would look for her puppies," he said. Ryan answered, "No, it is where the people keep their secrets." The hallway to Warren Blake's office was lined with framed photographs of ceremonies, donations, police, demonstrations, and smiling handlers. Warren appeared in most of them, one hand resting on a dog's back, the other shaking the hand of someone in uniform. Ryan recognized the type of photograph. Trust made visible. Trust polished until it could be hung under glass. Sadie walked beneath those images with her ears flattened and her eyes fixed ahead. At the office door, she stopped, not growling this time, shaking. Lauren looked at Daniel. "Her stress is rising." Daniel nodded. "We can pause." Sadie lifted one paw and touched the bottom of the door. Once, then again. Ryan closed his eyes briefly. "She is asking us to open it." Claire checked the order. The office was included. The door was locked. A facility key from the county access box opened it with a click that sounded too loud. Warren's office smelled of leather coffee and expensive cedar polish. A wide desk faced the door. Shelves held awards, training manuals, and photographs. A thick blue rug covered the center of the floor. Nothing appeared disturbed, but that was the problem. Ryan had seen staged order before. It had a stiffness to it, like a man holding his breath. Sadie entered only 3 steps, then turned toward the desk. She did not go behind it. She lowered her nose to the rug and gave a thin sound that made Ryan's skin tighten. Claire photographed the rug before touching it. Daniel moved the chair. Dana recorded the time. Ryan held back because this was not his search to conduct, though every muscle in him wanted to lift the desk with his bare hands. Claire peeled back one corner of the rug. Beneath it, the wood floor showed a square panel newer than the surrounding boards with a recessed metal ring set nearly flush. No one spoke for several breaths. Then Daniel said, "Document concealed floor access." His voice remained level. Claire's hands were steady as she photographed, measured, and only then lifted the ring. The panel opened with a soft scrape. Inside sat a black waterproof case wrapped in a sheet of clear plastic and tucked into a shallow compartment built between joists. Dana removed it with gloves and placed it on an evidence cloth. The latch clicked open. Ryan smelled paper before anything else. Then came the faint odor from the ski patrol station's sour blankets and cheap feed trapped in plastic. The case held folders, a small drive printed transport schedules, payment records, and photographs. One photograph showed Sadie in a crate with 2 newborn puppies beside her. Another showed the old ski patrol station. On the back, written in blue marker, were the words, "JR hold until route clears." Claire went very still. The next folder contained the public theft report with notes in the margins. Disable north camera only. Mud on rear plate. Stage broken latch after loading. Use masks. Keep story simple. Ryan felt the words enter the room like smoke. The theft had not gone wrong. It had gone exactly as planned. Emily Hart's USB matched the schedules in the case. Sadie's hidden puppies were listed under false inventory codes, not as living animals, but as units. Daniel photographed each page before moving it. Dana found a list of buyers by initials and destination regions outside California. "This goes beyond county jurisdiction," she said, "and beyond animal cruelty alone." Lauren had crouched beside Sadie, who now stood rigid and trembling. "She has had enough." Ryan nodded and stepped close. Sadie leaned into his leg, a mother dog who had carried the truth all the way back to the people who almost buried it. Claire's phone vibrated on the desk. It was an evidence device from the transport bay, one of Cedar Hollow's work phones powered on. After Daniel obtained the passcode from the office records, a new message appeared across the screen. "Move the rest before noon. Use Sierra grain. No local plates." Daniel read it once, then turned to Dana. "We need a rescue authorization tonight." Claire looked at Ryan. There was no triumph in her eyes, only urgency. Somewhere beyond Cedar Hollow's polished sign, the remaining dogs were still breathing in crates, waiting for people to become worthy of what Sadie had done. Ryan knelt beside her and rested his hand near her neck, not on the wound, never there. You brought us this far," he whispered. Sadie closed her eyes for one breath and let her tired head sink against his knee. Then the phone buzzed again with a location pin outside Reno. Morning came hard and bright over the highway east of Truckee. But the cold stayed low in the valleys where the plows had carved walls of snow along the road. By 7, a rescue convoy moved toward Reno under a pale blue sky, tires humming over packed ice, radios quiet, except for clipped location checks. Ryan Caldwell rode with Claire Benton in the trailing vehicle. His department jacket lay zipped to his throat and his hands rested open on his knees because he had learned long ago that fists made fear louder. Sadie was not with them. Dr. Lauren Price had refused and Ryan had agreed before his heart could argue. The mother dog had done enough. Finn and Ruby were stable at the clinic, each wrapped in warm towels. Each guarded by a veterinary technician who had sent Ryan one photograph of them sleeping nose to nose. He had looked at it 3 times before Claire told him without turning from the road, "You are allowed to care, Caldwell." He put the phone away. "Working on it." The location pin led to Sierra Grain, an abandoned agricultural storage property outside Reno where old silos leaned against the sky. And a long corrugated warehouse sat behind a chain-link fence. Snow lay thinner there than in Truckee, but the wind cut across the open ground with no trees to slow it. Daniel Reeves staged the vehicles back from the entrance. Dana Miles coordinated with animal welfare officers and a veterinary response team. Nobody rushed the building. A person frightened enough to move stolen dogs before noon could do something stupid if cornered, and dogs in crates could be hurt by noise panic. or the wrong door opening too quickly. Ryan stood beside Claire near the rear of the lead vehicle and studied the warehouse. His military experience did not make him eager. It made him careful. "Blindside on the east wall," he said quietly. "Roll-up door on the south. If someone runs, they may use the service path by the silo." Daniel nodded and adjusted the approach. The opening contact came through a bullhorn, calm and official. "State investigators. Search and rescue authorization. Exit with hands visible." For nearly a minute, nothing moved except loose sheet metal ticking in the wind. Then a side door opened and a young man stepped out with both hands raised, his face pale under a knit cap. He was 26, thin, with a patchy beard and work boots soaked dark at the toes. Claire recognized him from Emily Hart's description. Tyler Hart. He looked more frightened than cruel, which did not make him innocent, only human. "There are dogs inside," he called. "I did not hurt them." Dana's voice stayed even. "How many?" Tyler swallowed. "5 adults, 1 pregnant female from another facility, and 2 pups in a van out back, but those are alive. I checked." Ryan felt the sentence hit his chest. More puppies. Of course there were more. A lie that sold 1 litter did not stop because 1 mother escaped. Tyler was secured without force. Daniel read him his rights while Claire stood close enough to hear, but far enough to keep her eyes on the warehouse. Tyler kept talking, words spilling from him now that fear had found a crack. Warren said the dogs were being transferred to private protection buyers with paperwork to follow. Warren had said the theft report protected Cedar Hollow from liability. Warren had said Tyler would go down alone if anyone asked questions because his name appeared on the transport logs. "Emily told me to stop," Tyler said, staring at the snow. "I should have stopped." Claire's face remained professional, but Ryan saw the grief move through it. People often imagined wrongdoing as a single door. More often it was a hallway, and some people kept walking because turning around meant seeing every door they had already passed. The warehouse smelled worse than the ski patrol station. Damp concrete, stale-feed diesel, and the sour breath of scared animals. Officers opened the main door slowly after the building was cleared for immediate threats. Inside, temporary crates lined the north wall beneath old tarps hung to muffle sound. 5 adult German shepherds stood or lay behind wire doors, thin, tense, and blinking in the sudden light. 1 black and tan male pressed his nose to the crate and gave a low whine. Another female stood with shaking legs but lifted her head like dignity was a muscle she refused to lose. No one cheered. The moment was too heavy for noise. Ryan moved from crate to crate with Dana's permission, keeping his hands visible, voice low. "Easy now. You're coming out, but not fast. Nobody is dragging you anywhere." The words were for the dogs, maybe for himself too. In the van behind the warehouse, they found the 2 additional puppies Tyler had mentioned, both chilled but far stronger than Finn had been. They were wrapped in a moving blanket inside a plastic laundry bin beside a clipboard with forged transfer forms. Dana photographed everything before the veterinary team lifted them free. Ryan stayed back, breathing through his nose. The sight of small bodies in a cheap bin brought him too close to the cabin floor, to the old wool blanket, to his own sob catching in his throat when Finn had felt like a life leaving. Claire stepped beside him. "Go ahead," she said. "What? You want to check them?" Ryan looked at her. She kept her eyes on the van. "You are not made less useful by having a heart." He gave a quiet breath that might have become a laugh on a warmer day. Then he walked to the veterinary team and held the edge of the warming towel while 1 puppy sneezed so loudly an officer across the yard turned around. The sneeze changed the air. A few people smiled, then quickly remembered the evidence bags and the crates and the thin dogs waiting inside. Still, the small sound mattered. Life had a way of interrupting despair with terrible timing and perfect aim. By noon, all 5 adult dogs and the 2 puppies had been documented, stabilized, and loaded into heated transport under veterinary supervision. The pregnant female was moved last slow and careful, with Lauren advising by phone from Truckee. Tyler gave Daniel his phone and an address book from the glove compartment of the van. "Warren has another ledger," he said. "A paper one. He did not trust everything digital." Claire leaned in. "Where?" Tyler looked at Ryan, then away. "He thought Emily copied too much from the office, so he moved it. He said nobody would search the new cop's place because the new cop would be busy playing hero." Ryan's shoulders went still. "My cabin?" he asked. Tyler nodded miserably. "Woodshed. I drove him up there 2 weeks before the storm. He hid something in a loose wallboard. I did not know what it was. I swear I did not know." Claire was already moving, calling, dispatch calling, Daniel calling for a unit near Ryan's road. Ryan checked his phone. No service for 3 beats, then 1 bar appeared. A message from Lauren loaded slowly. "Sadie restless. Puppies stable. Bringing them to cabin later if road holds. Need quiet." Ryan read it twice as the cold moved through him. Warren Blake was not in custody. The rescue had taken the dogs, the records, the phones, the routes. But if the ledger was truly in Ryan's woodshed, Warren might already know the last place where his perfect story could still burn. Snow clouds were gathering again over the western ridge when Claire started the SUV and turned back toward Truckee. The sky above the Sierra darkened again before Ryan Caldwell and Claire Benton reached Truckee, and snow began to sweep across the highway in long, slanting bands. By the time Claire's SUV climbed the familiar road toward Ryan's cabin, the afternoon had turned dim enough for headlights, and every bend looked like it had been rebuilt by the storm since morning. Ryan sat forward in the passenger seat, one hand braced near the dash phone balanced in his palm. No new message from Dr. Lauren Price. No call from the unit Claire had asked dispatch to send toward the cabin. The silence from both felt too large. "Road crew said the upper switchback was open 20 minutes ago," Claire said. Her tone was controlled, but her grip on the wheel had tightened. Ryan watched the pines slide past black trunks behind white veils. "Warren knows the road," he said. "He was at the cabin yesterday." Claire nodded. "And if Tyler told the truth, he knows the woodshed. They killed the lights a quarter-mile below the cabin and parked behind a stand of fir trees." Claire notified Daniel Reeves of their position, then stepped out with her sidearm holstered and her flashlight covered. Ryan moved beside her, every part of him alert, though the badge on his jacket still felt newer than the habits in his bones. He was not on a battlefield. He repeated that to himself. This was a police matter, a rescue matter, a living town with procedures and witnesses and consequences. Still, snow under boots sounded the same everywhere when danger waited ahead. The cabin appeared between the trees, one warm window glowing through the dusk. Lauren's old white pickup was parked near the porch. Ryan's chest loosened by one breath, then tightened again when he saw fresh tire marks beside the woodshed, too clean to belong to Lauren. Claire saw them too. She touched his sleeve and pointed one set of footprints leading from the tree line to the shed door. The shed stood to the left of the cabin, half buried against a wind drift. Its door was not latched. Ryan knew because the top corner moved with each gust. Claire radioed softly, requested backup status, then started forward. Ryan followed a step wider, scanning the porch and windows. From inside the cabin came a sound so small the wind nearly swallowed it. A puppy crying. Not loud, not hurt maybe, but afraid. Ryan's hands went cold inside his gloves. He fought the urge to run. Running would give away position and give fear the wheel. Claire reached the shed ahead of him and angled herself beside the door. "Police!" she called. "Step out with your hands visible." For one breath, nothing moved. Then a shape shifted inside, and Warren Blake's voice answered lower and thinner than it had sounded at the threshold the day before. "Officer Benton, this is a misunderstanding." Claire did not laugh. "Hands visible. Now." Warren stepped out slowly, one hand raised, the other tucked inside his coat. Ryan's focus snapped to it. "Right hand," he said. Warren looked toward him, and the old polished smile tried to return. It failed. His silver hair was damp with melted snow, his expensive coat stained along one sleeve. "Mr. Caldwell, you have been dragged into something you do not understand." "Hand," Ryan repeated. Warren's jaw tightened. He lifted it at last. In his gloved fingers was a small leather ledger. Claire moved in, took it, and ordered him to turn toward the wall. Warren obeyed, but his eyes kept sliding toward the cabin. "Those animals belong to Cedar Hollow," he said. "They were bred, trained, and maintained at great cost." Ryan heard Ruby cry again from inside. He stepped closer, not enough to interfere with Claire, enough for Warren to see him. "They have names." Backup arrived in a wash of muted headlights just as Claire secured Warren. There was no dramatic tackle, no shouting in the snow. Just handcuffs, rights read clearly, a search of the shed, evidence sealed. The ordinary steadiness of it made Ryan feel strangely proud of the law. Not because it was fast, but because it did not have to become cruel in order to answer cruelty. Lauren opened the cabin door with Sadie beside her, one hand on the dog's harness. The mother German shepherd was still weak, but she stood tall when she saw Warren. No bark this time, no lunge. She simply placed herself between the porch and the doorway, body angled to shield the room behind her. Ruby peered around Lauren's boot, ears half raised. Finn was in Lauren's arm, wrapped in a clean blue towel, his small head lifted with a new edge of curiosity. Ryan's throat tightened so hard he had to look away. Claire brought the ledger inside only after Daniel Reeves arrived and the shed was photographed. The cabin table became an evidence station once again. But now it held the paper Warren had tried hardest to keep. The ledger was old-fashioned, bound in cracked brown leather, its pages filled with neat handwriting, initials. Dates, chip numbers, payment columns, route abbreviations, and notes beside each dog. Sadie's entry made Lauren swear under her breath. Adult female, proven nerve litter, viable hold-off book. Finn and Ruby were not named, only marked as M-Pup weak and F-Pup sable. Ryan's jaw clenched until it hurt. Claire turned the pages slowly, photographing each one. Near the back were entries for the dogs rescued at Sierra Grain, including the pregnant female and the 2 additional puppies. Farther down, another set of notes listed a delivery planned for the following week. Not from Cedar Hollow, but from a partner facility in Nevada. Daniel read the page and stepped outside to call federal contacts. Dana Miles, still at Sierra, confirmed by phone that the ledger matched documents found in the van. The case no longer rested on suspicion, reaction, or one frightened witness. It had paper, digital files, medical findings, recovered animals, hidden transport locations, forged records, and Warren himself caught retrieving the book. Warren sat in the back of a state vehicle outside, staring at the cabin as snow gathered on the roof above him. Ryan did not look at him for long. He looked at Sadie instead. She had lowered herself onto the blanket near the hearth, exhausted after standing guard. Ruby crawled into the curve of her body. Finn, after Lauren cleared it, was returned to Ryan's lap. The puppy smelled of milk and clean towel now, not ice. Ryan placed one finger against his tiny chest and felt the fluttering heartbeat. Still there. Still choosing. Claire sat across from him, ledger sealed in an evidence bag between them. Her face showed fatigue at last. "My captain wanted this file quiet," she said. He said Cedar Hollow had done too much good for the county to be treated like a suspect over a messy report. Ryan rubbed Finn's back with one finger. Good done in public does not erase harm done in private. Claire looked at him and something in her expression eased. Not because the sentence fixed anything, but because it named the thing she had been carrying for weeks. Outside tires crunched as officers prepared to take Warren down the mountain. Inside the fire cracked, Ruby hiccuped in her sleep and Sadie exhaled a long, tired breath. For one small moment, Ryan thought the worst might be behind them. Then Daniel stepped back inside snow on his shoulders and said the partner facility in Nevada had just been warned. Someone there was moving dogs before dawn. Before dawn, snow clouds thinned over the Nevada line, leaving the world dim silver and brutally cold. The partner facility outside Sparks sat at the end of a service road behind a closed equipment yard. And by the time federal agents reached it, the main building was already dark and half-emptied. Ryan Caldwell was not part of that entry. He remained in Truckee because Daniel Reeves made the right call and because Finn still needed him more than the case did. That did not make waiting easy. He sat in Dr. Lauren Price's clinic with Sadie beside his chair. Ruby asleep in a warming crate and Finn tucked against his chest in the same old wool blanket that had become somehow the most important piece of gear he owned. The clinic smelled of antiseptic cedar shavings and coffee burned past forgiveness. Outside the windows, plowed snow rose in hard ridges along the parking lot. Inside, phones rang, printers coughed, and people moved with careful urgency around animals who had survived what no paperwork could make polite. Claire Benton called at 5:42. Ryan stepped into the hallway so he would not wake the puppies, though Sadie opened one eye anyway. "They found them," Claire said. Her voice sounded rough from cold and relief. 4 adult dogs in the back building, 3 puppies in a van, all alive, 1 dehydrated but alive. Ryan leaned one shoulder against the wall. For a moment he could not speak. The hallway clock ticked loudly enough to fill the space. "Good," he said at last, and the word came out smaller than he expected. Claire understood. She did not try to dress it up. "Emily's brother gave us the right route. Warren's ledger gave us the timing. Emily is safe. Tyler is cooperating." The Nevada handler ran, slipped on ice, and surrendered with a sprained wrist and a very wounded sense of dignity. Ryan breathed out something close to a laugh. "Tell him the ice had jurisdiction." Claire paused, then laughed too. It was brief, tired, and badly needed. The days that followed did not look like the endings people imagined when they heard the word rescue. There were no trumpets. There were forms, medical charts, custody transfers, photographs, sworn statements, emergency hearings late. Coffee and dogs learning that human footsteps outside a kennel did not always mean pain. Cedar Hollow was closed under state order pending criminal proceedings and a complete audit. Warren Blake remained in custody. 2 staff members were questioned and charged. Others came forward with fragments of truth they had hidden out of fear. Shame or the lazy hope that someone else would stop what they could not bear to name. Emily Hart gave her statement at the Truckee station with Claire beside her and a church volunteer waiting in the lobby. Tyler gave his too pale and shaking but honest where it mattered. He did not ask to be called brave. That helped Ryan believe him. Finn grew stronger in almost offensive increments. One day he lifted his head. The next he sneezed into Ryan's sleeve. The day after that he tried to crawl out of the blanket and became deeply annoyed when his own back legs refused to support the rebellion. Ruby thrived sooner. She discovered Dr. Lauren's shoelaces, the corner of a towel, and the pleasure of making a grown police officer whisper, "No, ma'am," at a creature who weighed less than a winter boot. Sadie watched them both with the grave attention of a mother who had crossed through death's front yard and did not trust spring just because someone said the word. She improved slowly. Her ribs became less sharp beneath Ryan's hand. The wounds around her neck closed. Yet certain sounds still changed her. A rolling truck door, a diesel engine at idle, metal clips snapping shut. When those sounds came, she did not panic, but she gathered the puppies with her body and looked for Ryan. Ryan learned to answer without speeches. He sat on the clinic floor. He let Finn climb over his knee and fail magnificently. He let Ruby bite the cuff of his sleeve. He placed one hand on Sadie's shoulder, not to hold her, only to remind her that she could feel a human touch and remain free. Sometimes while the puppies slept, he would drift back to that winter ridge from years ago, to Mark Ellis and the cold that had taken him. The memory did not vanish. It would have been dishonest if it had, but it changed shape in the presence of Finn's warm little body. Ryan had spent years believing the story ended with the one he could not save. Finn did not erase that grief. Finn simply added another sentence after it. You stayed this time. You kept him warm. He lived. That was not absolution, not exactly. It was a handhold. Claire had her own battle in quieter rooms. She met with her captain, then with internal affairs, then with county officials who preferred phrases like communication gaps and oversight issues. Claire preferred plain English. She said the case had been discouraged because Cedar Hollow was popular, useful, and generous in public. She said popularity had become a blindfold. She said the next time a report looked too neat, someone should have the humility to ask why. It cost her. Ryan saw it in the set of her shoulders when she came to the clinic after each meeting, worn, thin, but standing. Ruby began to greet her by toddling sideways out of the crate with a tail wag so fierce it pulled her entire body off balance. Claire would crouch palm open and Ruby would climb into her hand as if she had been waiting there all her life. One evening after the last rescued adult dog had been transferred to a supervised rehabilitation kennel, Lauren found Ryan in the clinic's recovery room. Sadie slept nearby. Finn lay on his back paws in the air, making soft dream sounds that suggested he was chasing something no bigger than a dust mote. Ruby had fallen asleep on Claire's boot. Lauren watched the scene for a moment before speaking. They cannot stay here forever. Ryan did not look up. I know. Do you? He gave her a tired sideways glance. Lauren was not smiling. Sadie will need a home that understands working dogs' trauma and puppies with opinions. Finn may have long-term sensitivity to cold. Ruby needs someone patient, active, and not easily manipulated by big brown eyes. Claire looked down at Ruby. That sounds oddly specific. Lauren lifted one eyebrow. I am a veterinarian. Specific is how I make trouble useful. Ryan stroked Finn's belly with one finger. The puppy kicked in his sleep, fearless in dreams. I do not know if I am ready to take care of anything that small, he said. Lauren's expression softened, though her voice stayed practical. No one good ever feels entirely ready. Claire looked at Sadie, then at Ryan. You opened the door. Ryan swallowed. The words went deeper than she meant, or maybe exactly as deep. Before he could answer, Daniel Reeves stepped into the room with a folder in his hand. Public hearing is scheduled for Fridays, he said. Cedar Hollow's license suspension, regional working dog safeguards, and victim impact statements. Ryan grimaced. Claire noticed. They will ask you to speak. Daniel nodded. About the night Sadie arrived, about the puppies, about why independent oversight matters. Finn woke, then stretched and gave a squeak that sounded like a protest against civic duty. Everyone smiled except Ryan, who looked down at the puppy in the blanket and felt the old fear rise again. The storm was over, but now he would have to tell a room full of people how it felt to cry over a life small enough to fit beneath his chin. Friday arrived with clean sunlight on the roofs of Truckee and snow stacked along the sidewalks like white walls built by patient hands. The town hall stood near the old rail line, a brick building with green trim polished floors and a meeting room that had seen zoning arguments, bake sale announcements, road closures, and now a case that made people speak more quietly when they passed the doors. Ryan Caldwell stood in the hallway before the hearing began, wearing his dark department jacket over a plain shirt, one hand resting near the scar on his forearm. He would rather have walked 10 miles through freezing timber than stand in front of a crowd and talk about the moment he broke. Crowds made praise possible, and Ryan distrusted praise. It often arrived too late and left too quickly. Beside him, Benton adjusted the stack of files under her arm and pretended not to watch him wrestle with his own breathing. "You do not have to make it pretty," she said. Ryan looked at her. "What? Your statement. Say what happened. Let it be plain." Through the glass doors of the meeting room, he could see residents filling chairs, ranchers, retirees, police officers, handlers, church ladies from St. Luke's, 2 veterans from the local post families who had read the headlines, and a few people who looked embarrassed because they had praised Cedar Hollow for years without asking hard questions. Emily Hart sat near the front with a victim advocate beside her. Tyler sat 2 rows behind, shoulders hunched, face pale, present because his lawyer had advised cooperation, and because Emily had told him hiding would not make him clean. Dr. Lauren Price stood near the side wall in her clinic coat, arms folded. She looked as if she might vaccinate the entire county against denial if given enough syringes. Sadie did not attend the opening part. Lauren said the room would be too much. Finn and Ruby stayed at the clinic under care, though Claire had a fresh photograph of them tucked in her folder. Ryan had looked at it before leaving Finn asleep on his back against Sadie's side. Ruby sitting upright with one ear tilted forward, and the expression of a tiny mayor. That picture kept him anchored when the hearing began. Daniel Reeves presented the case timeline with careful restraint. Cedar Hollow reported a theft. Evidence showed the theft was staged. Dogs were moved under false transfer codes. Sadie and her puppies were held off book at the Juniper Ridge Ski Patrol Station. Additional dogs were recovered from Sierra Grain and a partner facility outside Sparks. Warren Blake and several associates faced charges related to animal cruelty, unlawful transport, fraud, falsified records, and conspiracy. Daniel did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The facts crossed the room one by one and took seats where excuses had been sitting. Claire spoke next. She described the original report, the disabled cameras, the locks that had not been forced, and the pressure to treat Cedar Hollow as a victim too. Respected to question. Her voice stayed even until she reached the envelope from St. Luke's. Then it wavered just once. "The recovered mother dog did not lead us to a theory," she said. "She led us to a place. We documented that place. The evidence did the rest." She looked toward Emily. But evidence often begins with someone afraid, choosing not to stay silent. Emily lowered her head. When she testified, her voice was small in the beginning. She told them about Sadie giving birth on dirty blankets, about records changed at Warren's direction, about how fear for Tyler had made her wait too long, and how shame had followed her into church pews and grocery aisles and sleep. No one interrupted. That mercy mattered. Tyler's statement was harder to hear because guilt rarely speaks in clean sentences. He admitted he had driven routes without asking enough questions. He admitted he had believed Warren when blame was pushed onto unknown thieves. He admitted that by the time he understood, he had already become useful to the lie. "I am not asking anyone to feel sorry for me," he said, hands gripping the page so tightly it bent. "I am asking that every transport record from every private working dog facility be checked by someone outside the business. If I had known someone else would look, maybe I would have been less afraid to tell the truth." Ryan watched Emily reach back without turning around. Tyler took her hand. It did not fix what he had done. It did show where repair might begin. Then Ryan's name was called. The room shifted as he walked to the front. He heard the scrape of chairs, the faint cough of an old man near the aisle, and the rustle of Claire's folder closing. He placed both hands on the edge of the podium and looked not at the officials at the table but at the people behind them. "I came home that night because I thought I needed quiet," he began. His voice sounded rough to his own ears. The snow was heavy enough to erase the porch steps. Around midnight, I heard scratching at the door. When I opened it, Sadie was standing there with snow frozen into her chest and 2 puppies under her body. He stopped, not for effect, for breath. One of those puppies was not moving. I wrapped him in an old blanket and held him inside my coat. I cried because I thought I was too late again. The room became very still. Ryan did not look away. Years ago, I lost a friend to cold during a mission. I carried that failure home and kept it quiet because many men mistake silence for strength. When Finn moved in that blanket barely enough to feel I understood something I should have learned sooner. Saving a life is not always loud. Sometimes it is slow. Sometimes it is one drop of warm water. Sometimes it is refusing to hand a mother back to the man she fears. Sometimes it is listening when a dog cannot speak but keeps pointing toward the truth. He looked toward the officials seated at the long table. Do not call working dogs assets and then ask them to serve like partners. Do not trust any system that lets one owner move living creatures through private doors without independent eyes. Sadie found my cabin because she remembered a safe door. Our job now is to make sure safety does not depend on a miracle in a snowstorm. When Ryan stepped back, no one applauded right away. The silence felt right. Then an older woman near the front began to clap softly and others joined until the room filled with a sound less like celebration than agreement. Ryan returned to his seat beside Claire, uncomfortable and relieved. Claire leaned toward him. "Plain worked." He gave a small nod. "Do not get used to speeches. Would not dream of it." The hearing ended with emergency safeguards, independent veterinary exams for all working dog transfers, dual agency sign-off for out-of-county movement, mandatory litter registration, surprise inspections, and a hotline for staff reporting abuse or falsified records. Cedar Hollow's license remained suspended pending permanent restructuring under outside control. To some people, the rules sounded dry. To Ryan, they sounded like doors being fitted with locks that opened from the inside. Late that afternoon, Lauren allowed Sadie, Finn, and Ruby to visit the quiet hallway behind the town hall after the crowd had left. Sadie walked slowly, still thin but steady. Finn rode in Ryan's arms, alert now, wrapped in the old wool blanket because no one had the heart to retire it. Ruby was carried by Claire and spent most of the visit attempting to chew the zipper pull on Claire's jacket. Emily knelt when Sadie approached. She did not grab her. She simply held out one shaking hand. Sadie sniffed, then touched her nose to Emily's palm. Emily began to cry silently, shoulders folding inward. "I am sorry," she whispered. Sadie leaned against her for one brief breath, then returned to check her puppies. It was not forgiveness in any simple human sense. It was something better. Life moving forward without waiting for every wound to understand itself. On the ride back to the clinic, Lauren asked the question Ryan had been avoiding. "When they are cleared, where do you think they should go?" Ryan looked at Finn sleeping under his chin and Ruby snoring against Claire's sleeve. The answer waited in the truck with them, warm, stubborn, and not nearly as far away as fear wanted it to be. Winter stayed in Truckee for several more weeks. But it lost its cruelty by degrees. The snowbanks along Ryan Caldwell's cabin road softened at the edges. The icicles above the porch shrank into bright drops at noon, and the pine branches lifted little by little as if the mountain itself was learning to breathe again. Ryan returned to work at the police department on a restricted schedule while the case moved through courts, agencies, and rooms full of paperwork. He wore the badge now, but it no longer felt like a costume borrowed from a version of himself he had not met. It felt heavy in the right way. A promise should have weight. Every evening after shift, he drove to Dr. Lauren Price's clinic with coffee for whoever was still there, and sat on the recovery room floor while Sadie inspected him for signs of acceptable behavior. Sadie healed slowly, which was the only honest way healing ever came. Her coat regained its shine along the shoulders, then across the dark saddle of her back. The wounds on her neck closed into thin lines hidden beneath new fur. She gained weight, not enough to become soft, only enough that her ribs no longer wrote their own accusation under Ryan's hand. She still watched vehicle doors. She still gathered her puppies when diesel engines idled too close. But one morning a delivery truck clattered behind the clinic and Sadie lifted her head, listened, then laid it back down beside Finn without rising. Lauren saw it. Ryan saw it. Neither said anything for a moment because some victories were too quiet for applause and too holy for noise. Then Ruby sneezed into Claire's hand and the room recovered its ordinary foolishness. Finn became a miracle with teeth. He was still smaller than Ruby, still sensitive to cold, still wrapped in the old wool blanket whenever the temperature dropped hard after sunset. But weakness no longer defined him. He learned to bark at his reflection in the clinic's lower cabinet, then became deeply concerned when the other puppy barked back. He climbed Ryan's boot, failed, tried again, and looked offended each time gravity behaved consistently. Ryan found himself laughing in rooms where he used to count exits. When Finn fell asleep on his chest without shivering, Ryan lay perfectly still for nearly an hour because he did not want to disturb the small trust placed over his heart. Ruby grew bolder by the day. She followed Claire as if appointed to audit her every step. Claire pretended to be inconvenienced. No one believed her. The legal case did not end quickly, but it moved. Warren Blake's public reputation collapsed under the weight of ledgers, messages, photographs, forged records, and living witnesses with scars beneath their fur. Cedar Hollow K9 Academy was closed, then transferred into court-supervised restructuring. Its old sign was removed on a windy morning while several former handlers watched in silence. A new regional working dog oversight board was created, not with glossy language, but with rules that could be checked: registered births, independent veterinary review, transport logs, shared with county and state offices, surprise inspections, and protections for employees who reported abuse. Emily Hart joined the rehabilitation program as a supervised kennel aide after investigators cleared her of wrongdoing beyond delayed reporting. She accepted the role with humility, showing up early, staying late, and speaking softly to every dog as if names were a kind of medicine. Tyler entered a plea agreement that required testimony, community service, and work with transport oversight education. He did not become a hero. He became useful in a better direction. The adoption decision came on a clear Saturday. When meltwater ran from the cabin roof in bright strings, Lauren drove Sadie, Finn, and Ruby up the mountain for what she called an environmental comfort visit, though everyone in the truck knew the name was too clinical for what was happening. Claire followed in her SUV. Ryan had cleaned the cabin twice, then pretended he had not cleaned it at all. He had set a new bed near the hearth for Sadie, a low pen for the puppies, and 3 bowls along the kitchen wall. When Sadie stepped through the doorway, she paused. The room was the same room where she had nearly collapsed, where Finn had almost slipped away, where Ruby had cried against the blanket. For a long moment, Ryan wondered if bringing her back was cruel. Then Sadie crossed to the hearth, sniffed the new bed, circled once, and lay down with a sigh so deep it seemed to empty winter from the walls. Finn tumbled after her, tripped over the edge of the bed, and landed nose down in the blanket. Ruby marched directly to Claire's boot and sat on it. That settled one part of the matter without paperwork. Claire looked down at the sable puppy. "You realize I have rules." Ruby bit her lace. "Strict rules," Claire added. Ryan smiled. Lauren folded her arms. "I will mark her as pending adoption by Officer Benton, provided Officer Benton accepts that she has already been selected." Claire sighed, but her hand had already lowered to Ruby's head. "Fine. Temporary." Lauren gave her a look. "No one in this room believes that." Ryan looked at Sadie and Finn. He did not say yes immediately because the word deserved honesty. He thought of night feedings, cold sensitivity training, veterinary bills, fur on every surface, the way love entered a house and rearranged the furniture of a man's life. Then Finn crawled into the old wool blanket, dragged half of it toward Ryan's boot, and fell asleep with one paw touching him. Ryan bent and rested his fingers lightly on the puppy's back. "They stay," he said. Spring approached in hints. Sadie began gentle search games in the yard. Not as formal work yet, just little trails of scent through melting snow, with Ryan praising her each time she chose curiosity over fear. Finn learned that sunlight on the porch boards was a serious occupation. Ruby visited the police station with Claire and became popular enough to threaten departmental efficiency. Lauren complained about this and carried treats in her pocket anyway. Emily came once a week to help with the rescued dogs in rehabilitation. Tyler shoveled snow at the clinic without being asked. Daniel Reeves sent updates when charges advanced. Dana Miles helped write the new inspection protocol, dry language that protected warm bodies. The town did not become perfect. No town does. But it became less willing to confuse reputation with goodness, and that was no small thing. On the evening the last hard snow melted from the cabin porch, Ryan carried a small wooden sign from the woodshed. He had carved it from pine, sanded it by hand, and burned the letters dark into the grain. "No little heart left in the snow." He mounted it beside the front door at eye level, not as decoration, not as drama, but as a vow. Claire stood beside him with Ruby on a leash too big for her current body, but perfectly sized for her opinion of herself. Lauren leaned against the porch rail. Emily and Tyler stood near the steps, quiet in the gold light. Sadie sat at Ryan's left side, steady and watchful. Finn leaned against his boot, wrapped in the edge of the old blanket because Ryan had brought it outside without thinking. For a while no one spoke. The silence did not feel empty. It felt like a room at last cleared of lies. Ryan looked across the trees where the old ski trail disappeared into the pines. Somewhere beyond it stood the station where Sadie had suffered and the path she had taken through storm and terror to find a door that would open. He would never know every step of that journey. He did not need to. The proof stood beside him, breathing. Ruby tugged once toward Claire, then sat when Claire asked, proud of herself for obeying after only a brief negotiation. Finn yawned so widely he nearly tipped over. Sadie lowered her head and touched her nose to the scar on Ryan's wrist, the one from another life, another winter. He placed his hand on her head. The old grief did not vanish. It settled. It made room. Ryan had come home believing he was a man built mostly from what he had failed to save. Sadie, Finn, and Ruby taught him that a life can be more than its coldest night. It can become the door that opens for someone else. Looking back on Sadie, Finn, Ruby, Ryan, and Claire, the lesson is simple enough to carry into any ordinary day. Listen when suffering arrives quietly. Not every cry is loud. Sometimes it is a scratch at the door, a trembling hand, a neighbor who seems withdrawn, or a small life wrapped in a blanket and fighting to breathe. God often sends mercy through people who are willing to stop, bend down, and care before they understand the whole story. Ryan did not save every life he ever tried to save, and many of us carry regrets like that in our own way. But grace does not ask us to rewrite yesterday before we do good today. It asks us to open the next door with love. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes kindness matters. Comment Amen. If you believe no loyal heart should be left behind, may your home be warm, your courage gentle, and your eyes open to the quiet miracles waiting in the snow.